Okay, listen, if you are a freshman or if you're about to be a freshman in college, this is important. And I know there's millions of videos that say that. I know it's like, if you're going to college, this is the video for you. But like, actually, no, this is a tip. And this is not even just a tip. This is just a concept and something that I feel like not a lot of people talk about when it comes to the success of college, especially when it comes to getting good grades and stuff. It's always like, studying tips and studying hacks and stuff like that. And like, that's fine. That's good. That's, the type of stuff I also try to give. But one of the biggest things that has helped me get good grades and stay on top of my work and my schedule, amongst other things in life, is picking the right classes, specifically picking the right classes in the very beginning. So like your freshman and sophomore year. The reason why this tip is so important is because, first of all, when you're a freshman, you have so much more flexibility that you don't even realize. As you get into the later years of college, you will have to be bound to certain classes. Like, you will have no choice but to take certain classes, because if you don't, you're not going to graduate. But in your very first few semesters, you have so much flexibility to choose whatever you want. That's why you need to take advantage of that at the time that you have it, instead of waiting to your later years, in order to pick certain classes. Planning out your freshman semesters is going to help you a lot in the long run, in the future when you're in college. Which is why I'm putting this out now, because I know orientation is happening for a lot of y'all. I know some of y'all are scheduling classes to go into school. Okay, listen, you need to have a plan. I know that sounds boring. I know you just want to go to college just to party and have fun and sleep around. Listen, you're paying for this, okay? If you're in America, that is. This is not free. So you need to have a plan, at least somewhat of a plan, at least a plan for your classes. Not only is this going to help you graduate, but it's also going to relieve a lot of stress. So what do I mean by having a plan? You need to pick your classes strategically. So with orientation, when you go in for your first time looking around at your school, that is when you pick your classes. So of course, that's gonna be the first time you're gonna have an advisor there, at least you're supposed to, and they're supposed to help you pick your classes. But that is not it. Like, that is not the end all be all. That is just what it has to be. You have the choice to go back in and switch around your classes later on. That is when your own research and your own strategic planning comes into play. So after orientation, when they pick your default classes, right, just what you need for right now, go home and look back at your classes. Look back at your classes, look back at the times that there are, and look back at the professors. And the very first thing that you need to do is go to a site called Rate My Professor. Now, this is something I was completely unaware of when I first came into college. I only learned about it like sophomore year, when everybody was like, did you go to Rate My Professor? Or what's their rating on Rate My Professor? I'm like, what is that? Rate My Professor is a site where it's exactly what it's called. People rate the professors that they had at college and let you know, their difficulty rating, how they were, and all that other type of stuff. Now, I want you to be careful when you use this, because people are biased all the time. And also, people have personal motives. They can say bad things about professors simply because they didn't like them. They can say good things just, out of bribery or something. I don't know. But what you're going on there for is not for the, oh, this professor was amazing, or this professor was bad, or they were mean to me. That's not what you're looking for, okay? At least that's not the most of what you're going to pay attention to. What you want to focus on is the consistency in things like their work, the assignments, their courses, how they plan things. That's what you want to look for. Search up your professor on the site, look through all the ratings in the comments, and see what people are saying about the course itself and about the professor and the way that they assign their work. Do they make you take essays? Do they give you finals? Do they give you midterms? How interactive are they? Is it a traditional lecture where it's just them talking? Do they put you into groups? Do they have you do a lot of projects? That's the stuff you want to look for. So go down there and find all the consistencies. You want to find as many consistencies as you can, because that makes it a little bit more reliable. Don't worry about people's personal opinions, because like I said, I've seen ratings on certain sites about professors where I had a completely different interaction with them. So while it's important to recognize that and acknowledge that, keep that in the back of your head, that should not be what completely dictates whether or not you choose a class. You want to plan it based off what you want to do for your work. Because, and this is something that a lot of us don't recognize when we leave high school, because everything is so strict and has a plan, college is a lot more flexible. That's the first thing you're going to learn when you come here. As a freshman, I know you're still on that high school mentality. When you come to college, it's going to rewire your whole brain. You're going to have so much more flexibility to do certain things. You don't have to raise your hand and go to the bathroom, okay? You don't need a hall pass. At least you shouldn't anyway, for my college, and most colleges, I know they don't, but they shouldn't. Either way, I'm saying you have more flexibility, which also means the professors have more flexibility. There are some professors that are very traditional by the book. They do their lecture, they give you A, B, C, D question test, they have a midterm, and they have a final. Some professors don't give you tests at all. My psychology professor does not give us tests. All he gives us is writing papers, on reading summaries on chapters that we have to read, reaction papers, which in psychology is basically exactly what it sounds like. You're reading a paper and you're reacting to it. And he doesn't even really mandate that we come to class all that often. So that's the type of stuff that you want to look for. Go to Rate My Professor, look back at the people that you chose, and figure out what their assignments are looking like. Because then you can create a plan to choose whichever professor that you need that fits your style of learning. If you're a very good person at, traditional multiple choice question tests, find a professor that assigns that. If you are a great writer and you love writing, find a professor that assigns that. If you know you have a busy life and there's things always happening and sometimes you're going to miss class, find a professor who, assigns a lot of things maybe online, so you don't have to be in lecture in order to get the information. That's what you need to plan out. Base it off of your schedule and the way that you like to learn, because that is going to help you a lot in the long run when it comes to having more flexibility and choosing what you want for your schedule. What you also want to focus on are the times. Obviously, you want to schedule classes that are good times for you. If you have work, if you have home responsibilities, siblings, or parents to take care of, wherever it is, obviously you want to set things up so that it fits your schedule. So do that, not just in picking times, but also picking specific classes themselves. Again, this is not like high school. You don't have to go to school every single day. You can have classes that only go for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can have Tuesday and Thursday off. You can have classes that are just Tuesday and Thursday and have Monday, Wednesday, and Friday off. You could do 4 days out of the week and have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. You can do all 5 days a week. That's what I like to do because I like to space out my work. And also I just like going out and being in the school environment anyways. But choose what schedule works for you based on the certain types of classes. So for me, for example, my very first semester, I got very lucky my very first semester. Like I said, I did this all on a whim with no prior information, nobody telling me how to do this. So I got very lucky my first semester. I took 5 classes, 16 credits, I believe. The max I believe you can take is 17. So I took 5 classes. I took Introduction to Psychology, English 101, iTech, math, and political science. And my schedule was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I had math and iTech, Tuesday and Thursday. So on Tuesday, I had political science and psychology. And on Thursdays, I had political science, psychology, and English. So English was a once a week class. Math and iTech was a 3 days a week class. And political science and psychology was a 2 days a week class. So I'm just going to use me as an example. English is my best subject. I love writing. I'm very good at it. I always have been. So I know that I don't need to be in class like 3 days a week or 2 days a week for English if I'm already good at it. So boom, I already took 1 class for 1 day out of the week. That's just something out of the way. I only have to go once a week and I do all the work on my own. Math, on the other hand, and technology, I am not good at that type of stuff. So boom, I take that 3 days a week. It's very hands-on, it's very in class, and then now I can ask my professor a lot of questions, and I can always ask them for help and actually be in class if I need it, because I did need a lot of help. Like I said, I'm not good at math nor technology. Psychology, that's my major. I'm really interested in that stuff. So, I only need that 2 days a week. Political science, the assignments that he gave were not that bad. A lot of them really were just on our time. I really could have done them at home if I wanted to. So boom, there was my schedule for the entire week. And for the entire week, I was done with classes like before 1 o'clock, I think, 12 o'clock. I think I was out the latest to like 12. So I had the rest of the day to do whatever it is I need to do. So you see what I'm saying? Just be strategic about what you're picking, the classes you're picking, even for the times and also the subjects. If you know you're very good at a subject, don't pick a class in that subject that's 3 days a week. I mean, unless of course you want to be in it to enjoy, obviously. Like I know that takes the fun out of it if you're just in there for once a week. But if it's something that you don't mind missing out on, you don't really care, to be in it all the time, you just need it for the credits, then pick that class less. Have that class like maybe twice a week or once a week, or have it online. You can choose online classes. You can be completely virtual if you wanted to. That's what I did just this summer. All my classes were online, so it was on my time. I could do everything when I needed to. If you know that you struggle with the subject, try to find classes that have it multiple times a week, like 3 times a week. And then sometimes when you try to pick classes, you realize they're full. That should not stop you. Just because a class is full does not mean you should just give up on it. First of all, go look at your options. Again, this is why this is so important for freshmen and sophomores, because y'all are just starting out. That means the world is your oyster. You can choose whatever classes that you want. At the end of the day, you have to get all the credits just the same. So normally when you start off, you take a lot of just your core, regular, boring classes, your math, your science, your language arts, stuff like that, social studies, and then we'll sprinkle in a few classes for your major, if you have a major. If you don't have a major, that's fine. But okay, say you went on Rate My Professor, say you found a professor that, seems like they're really good and they have the assignments that you need and that you want, and you try to pick them out. Oh no, you find out their class is full. Number 1, always have a backup plan. If you know that class is full, put it on standby. Do not give up on it. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but just put it on standby. Go look for some other classes. Remember, you have options. So like, for example, for some of your elective classes, you might need, like art or music or something like that. If art is full, pick music. Yeah, it may not be exactly what you want, but pick something else that you have interest in. Don't bank all of your success on one class. That goes for your core classes as well. A lot of times they'll have like different types of English classes or like sections of different types of core classes that you need. So like for history, I could have chosen European history, I could have chosen American history, Civil War, stuff like that. So if one class is full, go to another one. If academic writing 101 is full, go to creative writing. And like I said, these are just examples. I'm not saying this is actually what it is. You need to go into your account. They'll teach you how to do that when you go to orientation. But you need to go into your account and you need to see what is on that list that you need. Follow that list. And if something is full, do not harp on it the whole time. Go find something else as a substitute. Because again, it's going to be difficult to do that as you get into your junior, senior years, because it's going to get to the point where you have to take certain classes in order to graduate. But right now you have flexibility. And then you don't know that class is always going to stay full. Number one tip and trick, the very first week of college is your add and drop session. So that basically means people can add classes and they can also drop them without a penalty. This penalty basically being you'll get a W on your transcript or you can get an F on your transcript. That, again, they'll explain all that to you. The point is just know that very first week is add and drop session, which means everybody is looking at their classes and being like, I don't think I want that, or that looks interesting, I want that. That is the week where you need to be the most alert. Even before that, okay? Even right now, as you're watching this video in the summer, you need to be back on that site, whatever it's called for you, and looking at your schedule. You need to be going back and looking at your classes every single day. Does it seem extreme? Yes, but if you want your perfect and exact schedule, this is what you gotta do. That is literally what I've been doing every single semester, and that is how I've been consistently getting the classes that I want. Every single day, I have it pulled up on my laptop, and I refresh like 3 times a day. I do it in the morning, I do it in the afternoon, and I do it at night. So just because the class is full now does not mean it cannot open up. Every day over the summer, you need to be going back in there and checking for those classes. But if all, fails, if worst comes to worst, it does not open up, remember that very first week of school. That is when everyone is adding and dropping classes, and that is when you need to have your laptop open and refresh that page every 10 seconds. Because the chances of somebody dropping the class that you need are pretty high. I also heard that you can also ask professors if they can, open a slot for you to fit in. I personally have never done that, simply because I feel like if they do it for me, they have to do it for everybody. And it's like, I don't really want to put that type of pressure on them. So, but that's just me. I mean, if you want to, you can do that. I know a lot of people do it for online classes because it's online. There's no physical seating. But if worst comes to worst and you genuinely, after that first week, you seriously cannot find or nobody drops the class that you need, you could ask the professor to squeeze you in, just send them a formal email and be like, hey, is it all right if I join your class, or do you have any space for an extra student? Sometimes you might get lucky and they let you in. Sometimes they may not. Either way, they're not obligated to, so don't get down and discouraged if they don't. That's probably the biggest tip I can give to freshmen as they're starting this new year that I feel like, again, not a lot of people talk about, because not only does it help with your schedule, it helps with your grades. Like I said, if you choose the right classes for you, if you choose the right professors for you and their teaching styles and the way that they assign work, that is going to help you a lot with, getting good grades. Because if you choose a professor that only assigns essays and you hate writing essays and you're not good at it, you're not going to be relying on ChatGPT because they can clock that now. You got to use that noggin of yours to actually write a paper. And if you're not good at it, you're screwed. But if you choose a professor that, only has multiple choice question tests and you're good at that, there you go. The lighting in this is messing up. It's fine. Or if you have a professor that puts so many of their assignments online and barely does anything in person, but you're a learner who actually needs to be in person and engage with the professor, then that's not the professor for you. You're not going to get good grades. So choosing your scheduling, choosing the right classes, and choosing the right professor in those classes is the way to help you get better grades and also just less stress in school. And this is something that I personally did not know when first going into college. And as now I am a junior, there are so many classes that I either didn't take or didn't realize that I should have taken when I was in my freshman sophomore years, that I had to hurry up and catch up on during the summer, which is why I had to take some more classes, because if not, I would be behind on credits. And it's because I was delaying picking certain classes because they were either bad or they were full, or I was afraid that I was going to fail them, so I didn't do them. That's not what you want. I highly suggest that you go in with a plan. Again, I know that sounds boring. I know that sounds like a stickler, party pooper, whatever. Listen, again, you're here to have fun. That's fine. But you're also here to get your education, okay? If not, then why are you here? I mean, except for the people who may be, forced by their parents, stuff like that, that's different. But if you're willingly going to college by your own volition and you're just coming here to play, why are you spending money to do this? If you came here to party, just go to parties, like go to nightclubs, stuff like that. But you're here, I'm assuming, to get your education, okay? Do your future self a favor, and in those first few semesters, try to have somewhat of a plan. Take classes that work for you, not the other way around. Like I said, you don't want to be putting a lot of stress on yourself because you pick classes that don't fit you or your learning style or your time. Try to find things as best as you can. It's not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to have a perfect schedule with perfect classes. There's times where I've had classes I didn't want to take and I just had no choice in taking. You're going to have that. Things are not always going to be perfect, but at the very least, you can get as much as you need for yourself that works for you. And if it doesn't work, you can always drop classes. I'm going to talk about that in a separate video because that's going to be like a whole awakening moment with having to like drop classes. That's a whole nother thing that I feel like can stress people out. I know it definitely stressed me out. So I'll talk about that later. But have a plan, have somewhat of a plan, have a schedule. Literally take out, when I was at orientation, they give you like a little notebook. I had that notebook out and I was writing stuff down. Take into account your personal life, the times that you need to be there, and what you need to graduate. Go ahead and start planning that now. So in the future, when you get to your junior, senior years, when you're stuck having to pick certain specific classes, it gives you a little bit more leeway because you've already gotten the most of what you really needed in like the core classes and the other classes that you needed in your early semesters. So that is my number one biggest tip for new freshmen going into school. Have a plan, have a schedule, and do not be daunted if there is a class that you need that is not open at the time. Always be checking back over the summer. Always be checking back that first week because this is going to help you a lot with your first few semesters of college. It's going to relieve you a lot of stress, and it's also going to help you just get better grades overall. So anyways, yeah, that's all for today. I know I have not been active on here. I kind of forgot this channel existed, but I remember that the reason why I'm doing this is to try and help people with school things that I was not aware of when I went to college. So of course, like I said, school is starting back up, so I'm going to try to be a little bit more consistent, try to give more tips so that anybody who is going to school feels a little less daunted and they know a little bit more of what's going on. So anyways, yeah, that's the tip that I have.